This podcast is brought to you by Edge Hill University. Join us on an open day at our beautiful green campus, where there's space to blossom, modern facilities, and a community that puts your well-being first. Book now at edgehill.ac.uk/open days. Find your place at Edge Hill.
Hello and welcome to What's in Your Head, a podcast and video show aimed at encouraging conversations about exactly that, what's in your head. This podcast is brought to you by Edge Hill University, which continues to lead the way in mental health research. The university has just been awarded £2.5 million from the National Institute for Health and Care Research to expand its work into children and young people's mental health. The funding will help drive vital research in St Helens, Knowsley, Wigan and across the Northwest, areas where support is most needed. That commitment to mental health is what What's in Your Head is all about, breaking down stigma, sharing experiences and encouraging open conversations. I'm Gareth Roberts, and as ever I'm joined by my co-host Chris Kirkland, and today we're privileged to have Angela Samata with us. Before we get started, we just wanted to acknowledge that Angela has faced the heartbreak of losing a loved one to suicide. Her story of losing a partner, Mark, will be part of the conversation today, which some listeners may find difficult. That said, Angela has used their experience to create a hugely positive legacy, including her Bafta-nominated BBC documentary, Life After Suicide. Angela, we really appreciate you coming along to share your experiences. We wanted to start with something simple. We've heard from Chris before about what helps him manage his mental health. We all face our challenges at different times in different ways. So we wanted to ask you, Angela, what's in your head and how do you manage it?
Such a big question. Oh my goodness me, where to start? I'm trying to get better at managing it. And I think for me, I've realised over the years that I need to get out and change my environment. So what I tend to do is if I'm in London and I'm working, I'll try and walk between meetings to actually change my scenery. And also I think at the moment I'm doing quite a lot of writing. So I'm trying to kind of physically leave the house and go for a walk, even if it's of a night. I'll take one of my begrudging kids with me and just go for a night walk and just change the scenery, and that feels like a really good way for me to kind of manage things at the moment.
Great point, Annette, because I think you need a routine and a structure. We've spoke about this many times, but it can become a little bit stale sometimes. So you need to keep your mind switched on. You need to give it new things it enjoys. So I totally get that. I can get like that if I'm done something for 3 or 4 days, whatever it is. I think, I need something a little bit different now. Yeah. Just to reignite that, that passion.
I think it changes your perspective as well, because you're so pinpointed, focused on what you're doing or what you're writing or what you've been recording or whatever. And I think there's just something about being out and just kind of changing that.
I think if you do the same thing all the time as well, that can put you sometimes on a little bit of a downer as well.
100%.
Saying,
one environment over and over
again.
Too long. Yeah, definitely, 100%. Get outside, bit of sunshine on your face if you're lucky.
That's helping now. Yeah. That's a big thing as well. We were talking about that before. It's getting, 6:15 now? It's light till, so end of this month it'll be 7:15, 7:30. That makes a huge difference.
Absolutely.
It's a big win. Yeah. Okay, some great stuff there. Get yourself outside, go for a walk, change your environment. Angela, then, well, tell us about your story. Basically, you tell us how you want to tell that story yourself. I don't want to lead you. You've got your story. You go for it.
No, thank you so much, and it's great to be here with you both. I think for me, it goes right back to October 2003, because for me it was kind of the best of times and the worst of times, really. We had a 3-year-old and a 13-year-old then, and me and Mark had actually met at school, and he was in the 6th form and I was in the 5th year. So my friends were saying to me, "What are you doing with a 5th year? What are you doing with someone who's a year younger than you almost?" And his mates were like, "Oh my God, this is amazing. You're going out with a 6th former." And so our relationship kind of started there. And by the time it came to 2003, we had our 3-year-old and our 13-year-old. And we lived together, and we had like a gorgeous little house kind of opposite a park. And, you know, things were okay, except they weren't. And I think that we'd reached a point in that very long relationship, and we kind of done our growing up together, you know, and we'd kind of reached a point where we were considering not living together anymore and thinking about just having a bit of a break, really, more than anything. And in the October, I just got a job in the art world that I really wanted. So it was my first proper job in an art gallery, and I was really excited by it. But I think there were things happening for him that is a real case for me of, I wish I knew then what I know now. Because I think there was probably lots of red flags that mentally he probably wasn't doing as well as I probably wanted to think that he was. And so in the same month as I got the job that I wanted in the art world, unfortunately, Mark ended his own life. And that for us was, for all of us, his family, my family, all of our friends, certainly our children, was just an absolutely life-changing moment. And I can't believe I'm saying it now, but it was 21 years ago. And whenever I think about it, sometimes it feels like it was only yesterday, because it was such an enormous kind of change in our lives. And so the last kind of 21 years have been more or less as a result of that life-changing kind of moment for all of us, really. It's kind of, yeah, the legacy has just been, some of it's been amazing, and some of it is still tricky today.
I mean, I watched your TED talk prepping for the show, and you talked about there how, you know, in the blink of an eye almost, you went from, you know, a family unit to being a widow with 2 young boys. And I just wondered how did you even approach that conversation with your boys? Because that must have been incredibly difficult.
I almost get lost for words when I'm trying to describe it, because we'd gone from being a family unit, you know, a normal family unit with like ups and downs and, you know, potty training and, you know, all of those things, to then us becoming a single parent family. And the change happened in 15 minutes. You know, I literally spoke to him at 6 o'clock, and by 6:15, he wasn't alive anymore. You know, it was literally like that quick. So I think for me, it was almost, we were all in the same boat in that moment, because there was no hiding what had happened. You know, it was very clear what had happened. And so we just tried to kind of be as honest as possible. But, you know, the kids were like 3 and 13. So it was very difficult to know how to navigate that conversation. This was like not our world. You know, nothing like this had ever happened to us before. And we'd both worked very hard to bring our children up in a way that they were children, you know, that they were sheltered from things. So this was something that none of us could shelter them from. So it was a learning curve for all of us, I think. And, you know, I don't think I always got it right, but I think I always tried my best.
So you said you wish you'd have knew back then what you know now. Can you share some of them? Did you have any idea he was struggling before?
No, I definitely didn't know that he was experiencing suicidal thoughts, like absolutely not. But I think now that we understand kind of suicidal ideation, now that we understand like some of the stuff that I'm sure you've had conversation about around male mental health, around the risk factors that can affect, you know, that can impact somebody and may lead to those suicidal thoughts. There were huge red flags there. I mean, we were in the middle of talking about separating. We know that relationship breakup can be a really big risk factor. We know that he might have feared that he wasn't going to see his children as often as he might be seeing them when we were together. So there was really big red flags there that kind of make me wish that the last conversation that we had was probably me asking him just directly like how he was feeling and if he was experiencing suicidal thoughts, because the conversation wasn't that. The conversation was, let's talk when I get home, put the kettle on, I'm on my way back, see you in 10 minutes. You know, that was the conversation. It wasn't the conversation that I would have with him now.
What about his friends and his family? Did they say anything after? Obviously, there's a lot when it happens to somebody so close to you. You always feel guilty yourself, don't you? You always think, what could I have done? How could I not see it? Was there anything from his friends and his family as well? Did they say anything?
No, but there was a couple of other things that were happening for him. He was 32. He was male. He was in a high-risk profession. He was a chef. So there was a few facts around him that we know now, that suicide is the biggest killer of men under 49. He was under 49. He was male. We know that being a chef, working in hospitality can be a risk factor. He was working in hospitality. He was a chef, so there were some things around him that probably, again, with hindsight's amazing, isn't it? But I don't think that his friends and family picked up on anything either, and we've had like lots of conversations with people since then, and none of us picked it up, so it was, it's just kind of driven me to, I think lots of the things that I've done since Mark's death have really been around trying to educate myself, but also trying to really put things in place for other people that might be helpful to them, and just being really honest about what I've experienced, what the boys have experienced, kind of what that feels like, So just trying to be honest about it, really.
And even in those 20 years, obviously we'll come on to talk about all the things you got involved in and that kind of thing, but in those 20 years, can you see a change in society about how we're talking about these things, about maybe how people are maybe a little bit more educated than they were as well about these issues too?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think sometimes we still complain that things aren't happening quick enough, that like we need to do more. But when I think back about where we've come from, I don't know whether you guys feel the same, but 20 years ago, like I thought I was the only person that this had happened to. Actually, I was surrounded by people who've been impacted, affected, bereaved by suicide, but no one was talking about it. And it was only when I started to be quite honest, because I wasn't really sure what else to do with it, that people were like, oh yeah, that happened to me. Oh yeah, that happened to my relative, my friend, whoever. But no one was in my circle was talking about it before then.
Well, I've said to you before, I never knew, my dad suffered with depression, and I never knew until my struggles come out. My dad said to me that his dad committed suicide. This was back in the 80s. But like you said, it was never spoken about, and they never told me, because I think probably in the last 5-10 years, it's changed now. And people are more open. But they never told me until, say, my struggles come out. So I had no idea. But like you said, it's always been there, and it still always will be there. It's never going to stop. But it's like you said, it's about giving people, I think, more of a little bit of hope that there is an alternative.
Oh, absolutely.
If you can reach out and if you can be brave to ask for that help.
I think there's just a change generally, isn't there? And obviously we're advocating for there to be more. But, I think even in like my own friend group, I can see that, I've been down, I've been in dark places, and my friends have checked in on me. I've done the same to them. And I think even 20 years ago, you wouldn't have done that because your ego, the machoism, whatever you want to call it, didn't allow you to. It wasn't the done thing, basically.
Didn't have phones back then, did you?
Well, that as well. Thanks for that. But I mean, one of the things and one of the reasons I mentioned about talking to you boys is it still feels that there is maybe, and this maybe is something else we need to challenge collectively, almost a fear of discussing it, the word stigma is often used, isn't it? And then I think there's also everyone wants to baby step around it because there's almost like a fear that you could plant a seed with someone by even mentioning the word. So, what is your knowledge around that now, and how should people approach it?
Yeah, I think for me, that's one of the biggest changes. I think that there used to be an idea, and it's a myth really, if you ask someone if they're feeling suicidal, you're going to put the idea in their head. This is not like buying bread. It's not like you can influence whether someone buys that loaf or that loaf. This is not, what you can do and what you're much more likely to do by asking somebody straight out, are you experiencing suicidal thoughts? Are you considering ending your life? Is that you're much more likely to have a life-saving conversation than than ignoring it and kind of just not going there and coming out with one of the euphemisms, you're not having dark thoughts, are you? And I think, we've got a mutual friend, Jane Boland, and Jane and I co-wrote the Zero Suicide Alliance training, the 20-minute training that's free and anyone can do it. And when we were writing that, we were thinking about how can we really empower people to ask the question, because we knew people weren't asking it because they didn't know what to do if the answer was, yes, I am feeling suicidal. So there's a real fear that you're going to either make the situation worse or that you're going to say something wrong or you're going to put the idea in someone's head. So I think when we were writing that training, some of those ideas were really complex and really complex research. But essentially, I hope people come away from that feeling like they're empowered to ask the question and they know what to do if the answer is yes, which is to signpost into services that you absolutely believe in, they can help, and to have that information ready so that you can give it to someone straight away or take them to that service or make the phone call with them. And I think for me, it's about empowering people, not instilling fear. Fear doesn't get anybody anywhere.
I do that now, So if I get contacted by people I've never met or people stop us in the supermarket and get chatting to them, I ask them that. I say, yeah, I do. Because I think you can't sugarcoat it. And if you go straight to the point, listen, they're either going to say no or they're going to say yes. That's the same as if you ask them a roundabout way of asking how they're feeling, they'll say, I'm okay. I'm okay. Yeah. Or, I feel bad some days. But so I now do. I ask them, I say, have you had suicide thoughts? And like you said then, the places where to signpost them, you stick with them, you say, look, I'll come with you. I've gone to places with people, I've took people into rehab and stuff like that. So I think that the more direct you can be, the better.
And education's probably the next thing I want to talk about as well. We've got a PhD student here, Nina Smith, who produced the Churchill Fellowship report on school-based suicide prevention strategies. Now
Nina's incredible.
Yeah,
her work is incredible.
And that now seems to be helping with, more of a push, not just from Nina or not just from Edgehill, but generally like this sort of building momentum around getting it on the national curriculum, getting it talked about in schools at an early age. That's vital, isn't it?
Still gobsmacked. We speak it.
Every
time you hear that, it's as though it's a joke. It's just, how is it not?
Yeah.
How is it not?
Yeah.
So you're right, what Nina's doing
but I think there's a fear though that I think there's a presumption that Nina, the three dads, want to go into schools and start talking to really small kids about suicide. And I think that's a real misconception. I think for me, it's about, what they're talking about is encouraging children to have an emotional language so that they know how they're feeling. They know when something doesn't feel right for them or when they're feeling, it's to almost give them a language to kind of describe what's happening for them and to name their feelings. Because I'm training at the moment, I'm just about to qualify as a psychotherapist, and I still have people coming into my therapy room as adults who can't name how they feel. And it does them a real disservice because they're not really sure. And so it comes out as anxiety or fear but what I'm noticing as I see more and more clients is usually there's something underneath that. There's an emotion kicking around that we need to kind of name and describe. And I think the more we can do to empower our young children or people of any age to kind of really connect with what they're feeling, what's happening in their stomach. Your stomach normally tells you when something's wrong. I think we stopped listening to our stomach when we're about 4.5. But yeah, I think their work is incredible and just kind of really that emotional language, being able to articulate what's happening.
Should be as early as
vital.
possible.
Yeah.
What are the authorities waiting for, the people in charge of the school? Are they waiting for a 6-year-old, a 7-year-old to commit suicide before they say, well, actually, yeah, we'll start doing that now? Is that what they're waiting? It's almost as though that's what they're waiting for. And unfortunately, in the day and age we live, that could happen. That could easily happen. So yeah, the earlier that it's in schools, the better.
Absolutely. Angela, tell us about the BBC film, then the documentary Life After Suicide that mentioned earlier. Bafta nominated, Mind Media Award winning, all those things. 5.5 million people, or around that figure, have watched it. Amazing work. So how did that come about?
By accident, is the really, really honest answer. I carried on my career in the art world. So while I was doing the work in trying to give a little bit back, I think, to people who'd kind of helped me along the way, helped me to understand things, helped me to articulate things. I had been doing quite a lot of public work in the suicide prevention field, but I'd also carried on my career in the art world. And actually I'd worked up here for a little while at Edge Hill Uni, which I loved. And so the BBC tracked me down to the Walker Art Gallery, which is where I was running the John Moores Painting Prize at the time. So, which was great. But because they'd phoned the art gallery, I just got a message saying that the BBC had called about a potential documentary. And so I presumed it was an art film. So I was like, yeah, let's do it. Let's, I'd love to do that. But actually when I spoke to them, it was like, yeah, can you talk about the worst time in your life? Is that okay? And I was like, okay, this is a different conversation. Mm-hmm. But, at that point, we were 12 years into this journey, and I had spent a long time trying to encourage people to talk openly and honestly. And it was time to put my money where my mouth was. So I said to my kids, should we do it? I said to the BBC, how long have I got to make a decision? They were like, about 20 minutes, because everything was like ready to go. And my kids were worried. My youngest said, if it helps one person, we should do it. And I was so proud of him for that. But my eldest was more worried. He was like, I've spent a long time being the person whose dad died, and I'm not sure I would still want to be that person. So we agreed that he wouldn't talk about his dad on camera. And the director, Leo Burley, was incredible and stuck to that and listened to what he said and stuck to it. And so my eldest never talks about his dad on camera. But what you do hear is his music. So he's a drummer. And so you hear his music all through the film. So he's there and you see him, but the director was amazing and stuck to what his boundaries were, which I just thought was incredible. Yeah. So we made the film, and I talked about my lived experience, but also talked to lots of other people about their experience too, because this isn't about me. It's about using that platform to give other people a voice and for them to talk about their lived and their living experience, because this, for me, never becomes lived experience. It's always living, And so it was an incredible thing to be invited to do, and I'm really glad I did it.
I mean, it feels, like reading up on you about watching the stuff you've done and things like that, that you fairly quickly switched into like this mode of, I'm going to help other people, I'm going to help educate people, I'm going to, take the conversation on, get involved in this with the BBC, etc. Who helped you?
I was super lucky. In fact, was I lucky? I don't know if lucky is the right word. I have got the most incredible support network, and I've always had it, and I had it before, and I have it now, and I hope that I never take it for granted. So my mum is the strongest person. She's just incredible, and my sister is amazing. And so I've got incredible people around me who will talk me through things. I can always get an honest answer out of them. They'll give it to me whether I ask for it or not. But I've got an amazing group of friends who stuck with me through thick and thin. And so I think I often lean into them when I'm thinking, should I do this? Should I do that? Should I not do it? Because there's loads of things that I've said no to, and continue to say no to some things. But there's some things that actually I think, when it happened to me, I thought I was the only person in the world it had happened to, and it's an incredibly lonely road to travel. There was something about other people sharing their lived experience with me in a really altruistic way that I think I still value today. Even when we went to Bafta, someone had to come and get me out the toilets in the end because it had come up on screen that we were up for Best Documentary, and then I went to the bathroom. You have to wait for a break and then go to the bathroom because it's being filmed. And I remember getting stuck in the bathroom because somebody who will remain nameless said to me, they knew what I was up for and that I'd talked about my experience. And it was like, I've never told anyone this, and then told me about her suicidal thoughts and feelings and her bereavement by suicide. And I never underestimate the power and the privilege that I feel like every time I have those conversations, you know.
And tell us about, you know, that leads us into really the survivors of the Bereaved by Suicide charity.
Yeah. SOBS. So as a comms person, it was like the worst acronym that you can have for like any charity around bereavement. But the Survivors of Bereavement by Suicide charity was brilliant for me. I walked into a support group in Liverpool back in 2004. And I drove around the block. I think I said in the TED Talk, didn't I? I drove around the block desperately trying not to find a parking space so I didn't have to go in, and then it wasn't real, so I was all right. I was like looking for an excuse just to go back home. But, you know, the people in that group were incredible because they just talked to me.
Did you talk as soon as you went in? Did you say, did you listen?
Well, I had to fight my way in.
Yeah.
Because I'd lost like a lot of weight at the time because I felt like I had a stone in the pit of my stomach. I don't know whether anyone else has ever felt that, but grief for me was just like having like this big, massive stone in the pit of my stomach. So I probably looked in the best shape that I've ever looked in. And so when I went in, the woman who was running the group at the time, who left, thought I was there for the yoga class. So I was like, no, I'm not in this building for the yoga class. And she was like, oh, you must be here for the aromatherapy. And I was like, no, and in the end I had to say I'm here because my partner ended his own life. And then before I knew anything, someone else had come across and got me and seen what was going on at the entrance. And then kind of, you know, I had a cup of tea in my hand and I just listened the first group because I couldn't believe I was hearing other people with my experience. And I came out of that support group and I just felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders because all of a sudden I wasn't alone. I had my friends, I had my family, but these people had lived it, and there was a beauty in them just sharing their experiences that I've never forgotten. And it's why I'm still an ambassador for the charity, because they do incredible altruistic work, you know.
Can I ask you if your children got any help? Did they go and speak to someone?
I had both my kids in front of a counsellor within 24 hours, and it was totally the wrong thing to do. You know, I had a 3-year-old looking at me saying, when can we go to McDonald's? You know, like complete, for me, I wanted to get them in front of a counsellor because I thought it was the right and the best thing to do. But actually what they needed was just to stay close to us and just feel that in the chaos, it was okay, they were safe, and to kind of quieten their fear a little bit. But I think, again, that's hindsight. But I wish that places like Alfie's Squad, you know, that look after children who are bereaved by suicide, none of that existed back then. And I think that's what I mean about I don't think I've always got it right. I think I could have done more to help them, and I wish I'd done more to help them.
I'll go down to Alfie Squad. So I'm a patron for
really?
Alfie Squad. Yeah,
so they're incredible.
They are. Yeah, but again, it's the only one in the country.
Yeah, it is.
Which again is just mind-boggling.
Yeah.
But they do some incredible. And people think, well, when you go there, it's a sad place. And listen, sometimes it is, don't get me wrong, but most of the time the kids are in there to laugh, and it just gives them a safe space. The parents will chat, they'll cry, you know, because they're the only ones know what everyone in that room's going through. And it is an incredible, place to go and see it happening. How are you, so with going back to your kids now, it's 2 boys, isn't it? Do you still talk about it?
It was really funny, you know, because I don't know about you, but I don't think my kids knew what I was doing before lockdown. So during lockdown, I don't know what they thought I was doing before. Maybe they just thought I was just working in the art gallery, and they obviously were part of the film and knew that I was doing all that. But when they heard during lockdown, so both the boys were at home during lockdown, and they're 25 and 35 now, but they could hear me doing things like this, having open conversations, and they were often amazed to hear what I was saying, because I don't think they'd realise what I was doing. And I think sometimes, you know, sometimes they're like super proud and they'll tell me that, but then sometimes I think they wish I just worked in Tesco, because when I ask them if they're all right, I'm really asking them, like probably like you both, you know, I'm really asking them if they're all right. I'm asking them to look me in the eye and tell me what's happening for them. I'm not saying, are you okay? Like a parent who, or somebody who hasn't experienced this. I'm asking them as a parent that has experienced this and doesn't want to experience it again. So yeah, I think they wish I worked in the supermarket sometimes, but now they know what I really do.
I'm sure proud of you.
I was just going to say, and you know, they're both okay, because I guess there's people watching, listening, they can see your positive, they can see your smile, and they can see and hear that you've done some fantastic work. Are they okay?
But you know, it's tricky because I think when an experience like this has come into your life, or when you've experienced suicidal thoughts, which actually I never have, but I think when this has entered your life, I think you think about the people in your life and the people you come into contact with different, because I think I am a hypervigilant parent, and I know I am, and I'm sure I'm a bit of a nightmare, and I'm sure that I've knocked on my kids' doors at moments where they wish that I hadn't, as two teenage boys. If they're a bit if they're a bit too quiet in their bedrooms or the bathroom, I'm like, hi, everything all right in there? They're like, yes. You know, and in the end, I remember my eldest one day just opening the door. He just had to tell around him. He was like, right, listen, you need to stop going to that group, or you need to stop knocking on this door, because I'm going to tell you if something's wrong. Like, stop doing what you're doing, because we're going to fall out. And I was just like, right, okay, no worries, you know, and it was at that point that I thought, okay, I'm overstepping a mark here. Like, I've got to remember that because it's happened to us once, it doesn't mean that it's going to happen again. It doesn't.
I was going to ask you that, and it's. I hope you don't mind me asking you this.
No, not at all.
Have your lads ever said, "Well, I feel that way," than my dad did? Because because when I found out about my dad, I never knew he was on antidepressants before. I never knew about his dad committing suicide. I suddenly thought, well, is it in my genes? Is it hereditary and stuff? So have they ever said to you, could that happen to me? What happened to that?
I think they've worried about themselves.
Yeah.
I've certainly worried about them to the point where I've wanted them to be near me all the time, which is kind of not a healthy way to be as a parent, especially when your kids are, 6'2" and they've got their own lives, I think that they have worried about themselves, and, it's a question that I've been asked a lot. And I think I haven't got the answer to that, but what I have got the answer to is that help-seeking behaviour, that's contagious. That can be something that runs through families, actually having open conversations. I don't think there is a gene for suicide, I have to say. There are genetic links with other mental health issues, schizophrenia and things like that. But with this, I feel as if there's something about it, you experiencing it, that does make you hypervigilant. But I think sometimes we do ourselves a disservice because we forget about all the people that don't end their own lives and don't, don't have suicidal thoughts, because we're so in tune with the people that do and have, that I think sometimes we lose our perspective a little bit. And I think that's what I get when I said earlier, like sometimes I just go out and just have a walk, even if it's a night, because it's just that I think sometimes we forget to look up from this, and because we see those figures and we hear those experiences. But I think sometimes we forget that there's like a different perspective, that people who haven't been touched by depression or suicide or whatever, they have a different way of looking at things. And I think sometimes we forget that,
I think sometimes as well, and I think you're touching on it a little bit there as well, you just need to sort of break out of your own head a little bit, don't you?
Absolutely.
Because I think the conversations you have with yourself, if indeed everyone does, it's a question I always ask, does everyone else have an internal monologue, or is it just me? Even that, it's like this constant, like, I know you can overthink when you're on your own too much, I think. Absolutely. And, finding like-minded people like you did, and who've, experienced similar things, that's sort of out there for everyone. Anyone watching or listening now, whatever you're going through, there will be someone else who
Absolutely.
has. And, there's a myriad of groups you can reach out to. There are people you can speak to. We'll read out a list at the end of various places you can talk to, pick up the phone, contact via the internet, whatever. And it's huge, isn't it? Once you start talking to someone else who's been in the same place, you all of a sudden you're like, oh, it's not just me then.
Yeah, I think because that's the mindset it puts you in, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I think that's what it does to you. But then also when a lot of people I speak to said they're embarrassed, which I still never get to this. When I was going through it, I just wanted to shut myself off. I didn't have that. You don't have that. It's weird. You know you're struggling, but you don't have that many other thoughts. You can't focus properly. But then the people that come to me now and ask for help and stuff, they say, well, I didn't because I was embarrassed, or I'll think they'll think bad of me, or they'll think it's something silly that no one's ever, like, mine's not as bad as other people's. I think what you spoke about at the beginning, Andrew, I think we're coming out of that now, and you did as well. I think we're coming now where people are realising, actually, I need to reach out now. And we're never going to stop it. You're never going to stop suicide and people taking their own lives, but if you can reduce that percentage even a tiny bit, why not?
I think it's the ambition as well. I think you've hit the nail on the head. You know, the Zero Suicide Alliance, and, you know, anywhere that mentions the word zero was really problematic for me, because I was just like, you know, how many people is okay? You know, I was really, and I was worried about, like, if somebody ends their own life, and we're talking about zero suicide, you know, are those clinicians, are those individuals, those families who didn't stop it, are they going to get the blame? Or, you know, I had like a million questions about it. But I think, you know, 20 years ago, we wouldn't have been having this conversation. And I think we've really got to sometimes stop and realise, you know, we're standing on the shoulders of giants here. You know, I remember a time when it just wouldn't have happened. Like, you and I would not have been having this conversation.
I think even 10 years ago.
Yeah, you know,
chance.
and I think sometimes we need to just stop and remember that, because we're so busy, like, pushing forward and trying to do our best, you know. But I think this is the best, you know, just like, because it just wouldn't ever
That's what
happened.
really annoys me as well. Like, with this, you can't sugarcoat it. And I know that we said about the authorities that you can't say that. You know, they're too young for that, or you've got to word it differently. Why? Why?
It's normalising it, isn't it? Because you know,
it's real life. If you're going to try and make a change and try and help people, you've got to go all in. You've got to speak the truth, and it'll resonate with the people it's meant to resonate with. Yeah. I always wish. Listen, you have regrets, don't you? And people say you shouldn't have regrets. It's impossible. Everyone's got regrets. You always will. But it's one thing I wish I would have done back in 2012. I wish I would have asked for help. I wish I would have said, I'm not feeling right here. I don't know what it is. I don't know what I'm actually feeling, but I know it's not me. I wish I would have done that back in 2012.
But it's fantastic that you talk about it now, and it's fantastic that you put yourself forward in the way that you have to talk about it. You could disappear back into your shell, but you've chosen to use your experience in a positive way. And
it also, we spoke about this, it helps you as well. It sort of keeps you in check. It's your therapy. It's your therapy as well. I asked my daughter. Really? So I asked my daughter, are you suicidal? Have you had, I say that to her. And I said, well, listen, if you don't want to talk to me about it, make sure you talk to your mum, or make sure you tell somebody, because I'm worried, I mentioned it before, that she's going to feel that way, like I felt that way, my dad felt that way, his dad felt that way. So I ask her bluntly now, and I think that's the best way and the only way that you're going to try and make a slight change.
Absolutely.
So what's next for you then, Angela? You don't feel like a person who stands still?
No. But, you know, I just always feel like it's like such a privilege, like being asked to do things and like, you know, being here with you today. I mean, thank you so much for asking me. It just feels as if there's always work to do. There's always improvements that we can all be making together. But I think, you know, for me, it's about, it does come back to the boys. I think it's about, what can I do that means that, you know, if either of my kids are never feeling okay, you know, if they ever experience suicidal thoughts, I need the person that they go to, whoever it is, I need them to realise the link between being bereaved by suicide and experiencing suicidal thoughts. I need those people to listen to them, to take them seriously, to help them navigate, I'm not feeling okay, but I don't know what I'm feeling, you know. And so for me, like, every time I have an amazing conversation like this, it's about making sure that we're putting out into the world what we need for our kids, you know, for them to kind of get the help that they need should they ever need it, you know. So no standing still.
We say it all the time, don't we? People say they're going to do things, say that, well, I want to do this, I want to do that, and never do it. No. But taking action like you have done, it's amazing to see, and wish there was more people like yourself.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for coming on. And thanks to you again, mate, for coming along.
So I've got a question to ask you. Sorry, boys.
Go on.
Okay, so the driver who picked me up today asked me what I was doing, and I said that I was seeing you guys. So he had one question that he wanted me to ask
Tickets
you.
for the final.
So first of all, can you get tickets for the final? No, only joking. Is Salah going to sign?
I was just about to say it's going to be that, isn't it?
Is Salah going to sign?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm saying yeah.
Salah and Van Dijk,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
Trent, less doubtful.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
I
I'll
agree.
ask. I've got a question for the. Who's it? Taxi chap that bought you?
Yeah.
Will you see him again?
Maybe.
Well, if you do, ask him out of the three. If he had to
Okay.
pick two now to sign, which two? Because
Wow,
for me,
It's the two we're
it's the two who are going to sign at this minute.
Right.
Yeah. So ask him that.
Okay. Okay.
We've gone into a field we didn't expect to there.
Brilliant. Love it.
Not sure how that goes
So you
down.
you a Liverpool fan, Angela?
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Oh, yeah.
Cool.
Absolutely.
There we
Yeah.
go.
Tell
Yeah.
what I was hoping
Listen,
so with the colour of the jumper.
Listen, I've still not got over the sight the first time I saw Jurgen without his glasses. I'm still back there. I'm still like, oh my God, you know, I wasn't sure how that was gonna play out. But I was like, oh my goodness me.
Well, there's a documentary now with loads of
It
Jurgen.
is.
Okay, well, that's been What's in Your Head. A huge thank you to our talented creative art students here at Edge Hill who've been handling all the filming today. So Dylan Rauch and Katie Ashford have been working hard on this one.
Thank you.
We hope everyone listening and watching, we hope this conversation has encouraged you to think about your own mental health and reach out if you need support. Here at Edge Hill, there's a range of services available on campus. Our mental health and wellbeing teams is available Monday to Friday, 8:45 a.m. to 5 p.m. If you need support, you can contact Student Services Wellbeing Team during office hours. All the details are on the Edge Hill site. You can just walk in as well at the help desk in the Catalyst building. Away from Edge Hill, the university has worked with the Hub of Hope for many years, a mental health support database. It's provided by the national mental health charity Chasing the Stigma and brings local, national, peer, community, charity, private and NHS mental health support and services together in one place. hubofhope.co.uk. Whatever it is you're looking for, you can find there.
15,000 different organisations on there now,
There you go.
know. I remember when it was for 15,000.
Yeah.
Amazing.
A great place to go and have a look if you need some help or advice. And if you liked what you heard today, please subscribe to What's in Your Head wherever you get your podcasts. Look out for future episodes too on YouTube. We will be back soon with more guests and more stories to share. So until next time, keep talking, keep listening, and most importantly, remember that you are never alone.
This podcast is brought to you by Edge Hill University. Find your place at Edge Hill.